Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. First we're going to talk about northern direction, northern Ukrainian or southern Russian direction, how to say. According to information we have, the counter-terrorist regime was introduced in Bryansk region, in Kursk region and in Belgorod region. This counter-terrorist regime will allow the Russians military authorities and the police officers and special services to get easier access to necessary information like video cameras, to vehicles of the locals and to different infrastructure that will allow the Russians to be more effective in clashes with the Ukrainians along the border. Now let's talk about Kursk direction. As you can see, we haven't received lots of very interesting updates. We have some geolocations, most likely both sides, either the Russians and the Ukrainians, currently in regrouping process. The Ukrainians are trying to dig in deeper on the captured territory with the purpose to repel upcoming Russian attacks. The Russians, on the other hand, continue bringing additional reinforcements with the purpose to begin counter-offensive. The Russians don't have much time. They need to attack right now, because if they give the Ukrainians additional time, then it can take months until they are able to force the Ukrainians to fall back. We have additional photos and for fire anomalies. According to information we have, there is a very powerful fire anomaly between the villages Bukhovka, Pokrovsk and Snagas. We still haven't received any updates whether the Ukrainians managed to establish control over these territories, so most likely this is the consequences of clashes between the armies. Also, we have another fire anomaly in the vicinity of the farms between Yuzhny, Sverdlikova and Alexandria. Most likely this territory was captured by the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians moved additional artillery systems in this direction, and the Russians were bombing the Ukrainian forces, trying to destroy as many as possible artillery systems of armed forces of Ukraine. We have a very big fire anomaly in the city of Mirny that located to the east of Sudzha. So this is like one Sudzha agglomeration, it's like Toretsk agglomeration, it's like Lysychansk agglomeration, and currently we're talking about Sudzha agglomeration. There are a ton of villages that are located close to each other. Sometimes one city, one town moves to another without any borders. So this is the situation. As you can see, we have very powerful fire anomaly exactly in this point. Most likely when talking about these two fire anomalies, these are Ukrainian forces who were bombing the Russian positions, trying to reduce their resistance and to move further in the eastern direction. As for videos from this area, we have one video that is coming from Sudzha agglomeration, from Zaleshenka. In this video we can see the Ukrainian soldiers who were raising the flag in the building, and this video confirms Ukraine control over this territory. We have adjusted this block yesterday based on another photo of Ukrainian in the vicinity of some small shop, and now we see another video, and this give us 100% confirmation that Ukrainians are still there, and that's they still haven't left this territory, because some Russian sources began spreading the information that Ukrainians left Sudzha agglomeration further in the western direction. But as we understand, the Russians are speculating right now. During the previous 12 hours, the Russians were bombing Yunakievka heavily. Currently, this is the main Ukrainian base, the main area of concentration of forces, the main logistic hub, and according to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, since the beginning more precisely of the Kursk offensive operation from the Ukrainian side, the Russians attacked and bombed Yunakievka with dozens of bombs, trying to reduce the Ukrainian possibilities. Now let's move further and let's talk about Belgorod direction. Today, this morning, we got very interesting information from the village by the name of Pokrovsk. First, we got report from pro-Russian sources that, according to information that was published during the morning, the Ukrainians entered the village and captured. Later, pro-Ukrainian sources published the video with another batch of Ukrainians, up to 5 soldiers, as you can see, entered Pokrovsk, captured civilians and captured the village itself. Later, the Russian sources stated that after the Ukrainians made the video, they left the village and the Russians restore control over this territory. Currently, we don't know for sure who is telling the truth, but anyway, we have the video confirming Ukrainian presence. I'll remind you that during the previous few days, the group of forces north stated control over the village of Lukashevka and Sotnitsky Kazachok, which are located very close to the village of Pokrovsk. So very weird and interesting situation. Now let's move to Volchansk. According to the group of forces north, the Russians are about to finish the battle for Volchansk stronghold. The high-rise building area is about to be captured by the Russians. Maybe during the next few days they will do this, and of course after that it's going to be much more easier for the Russians to move further in direction of the river. But as I understand, currently nobody cares about the situation in Volchansk. Everybody is interested just in the situation of Sumy. But as you can see, during the previous night we haven't received almost anything from there. Now let's move to New York agglomeration. During the previous 12 hours we got additional updates from this area. The Ukrainian sources published the video of how they were counterattacking the Russian forces in the north, in the central and in the eastern part of the citadel of the city. In this video we can see the work of Ukrainian assault group 425th Storm Battalion Skala, RAK in English. They were counterattacking the Russian positions. They were attacking the Russian forces side of the buildings within a very close distance. This video confirms that at least the Russians did have control over this territory probably yesterday, the day before yesterday, during the previous few days. We don't know for sure whether the Ukrainians managed to restore control over this territory, but anyway, this video is enough to make some adjustments on map. Currently, the Ukrainians were counterattacking the Russians exactly in this area, and once again, we don't know for sure whether the Ukrainians managed to restore control over or not, but obviously we can make a conclusion that the territory that located below this area is obviously the complete Russian control. So we have adjusted the map and we have added this block, these streets of New York, of the south of New York, under complete Russian control, so this territory. Now let's move further. According to information we have, during the previous night, during the previous days, the Russians improved their positions to the west from the village of Yunakivka, and as a result of very heavy clashes, the Russians established complete control over this stronghold. So the Russians are moving further in direction of the villages Pantelimonovka and Alexandropol. Now let's talk about Pokrovsk direction. During the previous 12 hours we got additional updates and we have some changes on the ground, as you can see. The Ukrainian sources published the video of how they were bombing and attacking the Russian forces inside of Ivanovka. In this video we can see the movements of Russian soldiers from one building to another, and we see how the Ukrainians were bombing additional Russian position. This video, there were lots of episodes of attacks, artillery strikes, but two of them were geolocated. One of the Ukrainian attack took place exactly in this building. Another Ukrainian artillery shelling took place exactly in this area. Based on these two episodes, we have adjusted the map and we have added the territories, significant territories, under complete Russian control. Now we have 100% sure information that the Russians control more than 150% of the village and that the village is about to be captured by the Russians. And probably this is going to happen very soon. Now let's talk about Grodovka. If you remember, 3 days ago we got the first updates, reports that the Russians entered this village, and today we got additional information from pro-Ukrainian mappers. This information of additional Russian progress was confirmed by pro-Ukrainian mappers Deep State, and according to this information we have adjusted the map. So as you can see, the Russians during the previous few days managed to improve their position significantly to the west of Vysela and to the northwest. Currently there are very heavy clashes exactly for the village of Grodovka, and as we discussed, if the Russians are able to take under control this village, that means that the Russians will be able to enter the second defense belt in direction of Pokrovsk, and this is, let's say, not the final one, but it's already like the outskirts and the suburbs of Pokrovsk itself. So this is very interesting progress of armed force of Russian Federation. Now let's move further. We have additional video with a flag from the village of Nivoyska. Probably the third time since the beginning of the battle for this area the Russians establishing control over the village. In this video we can see the Russian soldiers who were raising the flag above the most northwestern part of this small village, but anyway we still haven't received any updates and any geolocations that confirm Russian control over the farms that located further in the northwestern direction. Most likely these farms are still under Ukrainian control. Now let's move further. We have additional updates from Pokrovsk and from Zaporizhzhia direction. The Russians, after a very short operational pause, resumed their attempts to their bombings and attacking of Ukrainian positions inside of the village Blagodatne. This is the next settlement that located on the line between Rozhaina and Velika Novoselovka. Most likely the Russians are about to resume their attempts to move further in the northern direction. The Ukrainian sources published a lot of videos of how they were bombing and attacking the Russian forces in the vicinity of Tokmak. If you remember, during the previous days, the Syrsky himself, and there were lots of sources who stated that that the Russians have concentrated significant number of forces in the vicinity of Pokrovsk, and as I understand, the Russians are expecting, or the Ukrainians are planning to attack the Russians. Currently we don't know for sure, but we see a lot of videos, we have a lot of geolocations with significant number of the Russian forces, with significant number of bases and the concentrations, and the Ukrainians of course have a lot of job to do and are bombing and attacking the Russians. In this video we can see another camp of Russian forces that was attacked by Ukrainian missile. A little bit further in the southern direction we have few more videos. In this video that was published on the 5th of August, we can see air defense system of armed forces of Russian Federation, and as a result of strike the Russian air defense system was destroyed. A little bit further in the southern direction we have the video in the vicinity of Starobogdanovka. In this video we can see a big concentration of Russian forces, like a military camp in the forest, significant number of armored vehicle bases, camps, warehouses and so on, and the Ukrainians began bombing this territory heavily. So once again, summarizing everything, we see that the Russians have concentrated significant number of forces in the vicinity of Tokmak, and maybe the Russians do have some plans to start offensive in Orekhov or Gulay Pole direction in the very near future. Of course, everything depends on the situation in Kursk and Sumy and Bryansk. If the Ukrainians continue sending additional reinforcement in this direction, then the Russians will attack, may try to attack in Orekhov as well. Now let's move to Kherson area. The Ukrainian sources published the video how they managed to land on the Kinburn speed. The Russians during the previous day stated that they managed to repel every single attempt made by the Ukrainians, and today the Ukrainians published their own version of the situation. As you can see on this video, the Ukrainians managed to land infantry. They, of course, they were under very heavy fire. There was a very short battle, close combat, and in the end of this video we can see how the Ukrainian soldiers raised the flag in the Kinburn speed. That confirms that they managed to do something, but later, as we know, they left this territory and suffered significant losses. And the process, the resistance in Ukraine continues. Today we got additional video how the locals, how people from Odessa continue setting on fire the military equipment and military vehicles of the recruiters and armed forces of Ukraine. So the process continues. Of course, during the previous few days we haven't received a lot of updates because people were mainly concentrated on the situation in Kursk and Sumy, but as I understand, maybe today, maybe during the next few days, the situation will be stabilized and we will return back to the regular military routine from Ukraine. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.